Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the City Council work session. You can hear us all much, much better tonight, and so we'll try not to lean into our microphones to speak. It's August 7th, and looking around the room and seeing we have everybody here, with the exception of Miss Malcolm. She had surgery last week, so she'll be home recovering. I will call the meeting to order. City Administrator update, Logan.
Yeah, real quick, just a couple things of note. North Broad LCI Streetscape project started yesterday officially. There wasn't a lot of activity. You probably won't see a lot of mobilization and activity for a week, maybe 2 weeks, but they're starting to stake out a lot of the work. And that will start on the west side of Highway 11 North Broad Street, just above Mayfield Drive, and they're going to work south down to West Marable, cross back over the street over by the water plant, and then work back north, back up to the bridge. That's the game plan there. West Spring Street, it's gone a little slower than anticipated, but of course, everything in the construction world has. We've had over 50 rain days, so we're taking a look at that provision in the contract right now with the contractor. So it's backed up a little bit. They were out there today making a good amount of progress until this last storm came through today. So that's going to back them up a little bit more. But overall, the project is going well, and we hope to wrap it up in the next 6 weeks or so if we can get some good weather.
Anybody have any questions? All right, moving along, Central Services, Mr. Bailey.
Okay, real kind of quick, website and everything is done. I've sent that email out to let y'all know that transition's happened. The new agenda system is going to take just a little bit of learning. We're about 2 months away from it being completely integrated with the website, so you can follow everything. Everything should be fairly clickable, though. It'll be in PDF format. Some people don't like that, but everything should be fairly easy to find, fairly easy to flow once everything's truly integrated. Badge Pass that we had approved with the building security and door systems is completed. And then I was going to show off, obviously, we can hear a little bit better, and everything works. And then, too, some of the video components that we had. And I wanted to show you how we can do presentations going forward. I can remember my password. So it's as simple as get in, can mirror the phone, and to do the report, I'm going to talk a little bit about Childers Park, and you can see where on the McDaniel Street side where we mulched the entrance, everything, benches, trees. We planted grass seed. Hopefully most of it hadn't washed away by now, but some is coming up. You can see the trees, everything that's there on that little entrance side, and we'll continue to keep an eye on it and make sure that that's a little more presentable from that entrance to the park. Another big topic was the dog park. That was when the sod was initially laid in. I think we had something like 800 shares maybe on Facebook. New toys and everything out. That was a pretty sunny day. Just different things, barrels that replaced, hoops and rings. A little pad for everybody to sit on, take pictures. Some things that we added. We've also got an organization called Tinker Garden that will start holding classes for children ages 18 months to 8 years. And it's to teach them various skills through education in the park, through natural means, and just associating and allowing them to build relationships with one another. And if you can kind of go to their website, and it'll tell you a little bit about them. There's roughly, they're involved in 48 states currently. There are 1,864 leaders, which are the teachers for the park, for the children that come in. And nationwide, there are 127,000 kids that go through this program and that are currently active with it. And they're going to hold classes in Childers Park from the end of August until the very 1st of November. There'll actually be 12 classes total, to where they'll meet on Saturdays. So if you happen to be in the area, go by, and I mean, you see a group, that's what they're doing. Let me get everybody logged in. A few pictures of some of the things that you can see, and like I say, they're just teaching them nature skills, outdoor skills. And there's my personal favorite, and this would probably be me. Not sure we're learning a lot, but we are playing in the mud. And that's pretty much, that's everything I've got. Anybody's got any questions?
Anyone? It looks fantastic.
Thank you.
It really, really does. Moving into our committee information, Mr. Bradley, Finance?
Yeah, we have a couple of items. I'm getting feedback already. I'm gonna ask Ms. Thompson if she'll give us their monthly report first.
Thank you.
A few things to update of the finance department that we've been working on the last month or so. A few of the finance staff, along with myself, attended a Malden Jenkins audit class today. It was a free class at Malden Jenkins, our auditors. They offer different classes throughout the year, and we try to take advantage of those whenever we can. And this class was about year-end close and annual audit, and we got a lot of good information on that. I have been working in conjunction with GMA, and we are going to host a customer service training class here on August 21st. I'm really excited about that, to bring GMA here. They're going to bring in other cities, and they're going to do some customer service training, and we're going to run all of our customer service people downstairs and upstairs through this class. So it'll be 2 different classes, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. So we're excited to be able to host that here with GMA. Also with GMA, we have implemented the Home Depot Government Solutions annual rebate. It's an annual rebate of 3% with any of our purchases at Home Depot with our P card. Since we went to the new P card system, we did away with our Home Depot credit card system, or credit card that we had, and we're able to implement this 3% rebate through our P card system that we have through GMA. So we have implemented that. Some Tyler software updates. This is the software that we will be implementing between September and February of next year here at City Hall. We are still on track for business license permitting and code to go live on September 17th. They've all been working hard on configuration and conversion training on that. We're also working on configuration of our chart of accounts right now, and general ledger and payroll and AP are slated to go live in November. To give us an update on the financial report, this is as of June. Obviously, June is our 6th month in, so we're halfway through the year as of this report. In a perfect world, we would be at 50% of our budgeted amounts, and we are almost near perfect, which I'm glad to say. Our general fund revenues are at 51%. General fund expenses are at 42%. Utility revenues are at 55% of the budgeted amounts. Utility expenses were at 49%. Solid waste at 50% revenues, and solid waste expenses were at 45%. I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Beth, on your last thing, you talked about being 6 months into the year, and I'm turning this way so I can get to the
That's fine.
Since we have completed 50% of the year now, and I know some items are above 50% and some are less than 50% on both income and expenses. At this point in time in the year, do you see anything that we would anticipate needing to make any budget adjustments?
There is one thing, and of the utility revenues, we're at 55% of budgeted amount, so that's due to the MEAG portfolio investment. We are earning more on that investment in 2018 than we did in 2017, so that was something that wasn't able to be looked at during the budget. So this year, and actually that's what another thing I did not update on, is we are in the beginning stages of the operating annual budget, working on that, and so that is something that I will take into consideration.
Are there any other questions?
Okay, we have Another item on the agenda, the City Hall landscaping and rehab request. I'm gonna ask Mr. Bailey if he'll review that one for us.
Thank you, sir. What we're looking at here is, I mean, anytime we come into the building, we drive by, we see how things look outside. Our grass is not so much grass anymore, it's mainly weeds. Our shrubs and bushes that we have around the building, the parking lots, are either A, dead, B, they're overgrown, and you've got 3 or 4 different types coming up where it's been there for so long and hasn't been maintained, or you've just had an overgrowth of things, or C, where we have bushes and whatnot in the parking lot, people pull up so close and they run over them. The heat from the cars kills a lot of things. Crepe myrtles and whatnot that we have around the building, you know, that we cut down, that were growing kind of and affecting our basement, our foundation, growing into the concrete, growing up under curbs. When you cut those down, crepe myrtles try to pop back up in the root system, which is then out in your grass. And to kill that, you kill everything. So what I'm requesting is that we completely overhaul what we have. We go to a design that is more mulch, less pine straw, fewer bushes. We remove every crepe myrtle we have around the actual building. We leave the ones that are in the parking lot. And we remove the bushes that we have to clean everything out. We take up the sod where the crepe myrtles are coming up, and we redo all of that. And then after that, the most important part is that we maintain it. We don't let this go like we have in the past. I mean, this building's roughly 15, 20 years old. And that system, and I've already got companies set up. Our current landscapers will maintain what's put in if we approve this tonight. But we're taking out of our CIP program that was put in place for City Hall. And it included the drive-through renovation that should come before you next month, I hope, if we have design and everything, possibly October. But we should have plenty of funding for that. So this request is to allow PS Landscapes to come in, replace, to remove 90% of what we have. The sod that's actually on Broad Street will stay because most of that's new. And then we will examine the other areas and see what we can save, what we can't. This is a maximum price on labor to remove what we have currently. And I fully expect it to come under budget. And I'll be happy to answer any questions or do the very best I can. I think if you scroll through, you'll see some of the bushes that we've actually picked out or that the landscaper provided. That'll be low maintenance, easier to maintain, and won't interfere with kind of the building itself.
With this much work being done, has a plan been drawn?
Yes, it has. I had just kind of a general pencil sketch. I didn't attach it. For the most part, if you look at the plants around the building, the arbor vitae you can actually go through is a taller cedar plant that will be spaced between windows. The lower ones, and God bless me if I can get this word right, Alora petalum will be a lower red bush that you can actually, it's not the giant Chinese one that when you go to cut it sticks to you, because I have those at my house and I hate them. The sky pencils and the lemon lime nandinas will go mostly out front to set off where the fountain area is. Yes, we'll address the fountain going forward and have that fixed. The spiral junipers, the green arbor vitae, the annuals will go in that center stretch where the main City Hall entrance sign is coming off of Highland Avenue. And then the knockout roses will go along Walton Street on the back side of the parking lot, and we get rid of those uneven bushes. If you stand at Broad Street and look at it, they get wider as they go, and then it's just, it's like a plateau of bushes, and you got 7 or 8 things growing up in it. And then around the flagpole, you'll have annuals that will replace along with the entrance, yearly or seasonal. Didn't necessarily include a drawing. It's just kind of a simple, kind of the way things look. The bushes actually are similar to the ones that we put in at the onstage Walton building. We're trying to keep that similar look as we do facilities around town.
You know, I'm gonna agree that I think something needs to be done to make it better than it is today. Somewhat concerned on $34,000,
Well,
particularly when you just said a few minutes ago that most of this would be replaced not with plants as much as with mulch and other type of things. Yet, when I look over the number of plants and bushes and flowers going out, it's, you know, pretty significant volume there.
well, and that's the thing, the majority of the cost is, it's a labor-intensive project. You're not paying much for the actual plants and whatnot themselves. You're paying for the removal of what we have, and you're hoping things come out easier than not. You've also got to stage it to where we're not blocking off our entire parking lot, where we're doing it in sections. Same thing with the employee parking lot. And then that's to re-level everything, to bring topsoil in. And that's where they factored in what they foresee as the maximum hours to do that. At which point they fully expect it not to be as difficult. That's what they're saying, but at the same time, you can't guarantee how long it's going to take you to remove plants and whatnot that have been here for that long.
Any other
It's
questions?
it's tough to ask this next question about saving us on maintenance, because it doesn't look like we've done any maintenance for a while, in my opinion, but we're looking to go as close to maintenance-free as we can.
Correct.
Do we know square footage of sod that we're taking out and what's coming back? Or
It depends. Right now, we've also, I've got a contract in place with Top Turf to treat it. I think it'll be 7 times a year. It's literally $50 a treatment. They're going to help and walk with us and figure out what they feel like they can bring back versus what we feel like we can't. Their estimated timeline, like if you look around the flagpole, I mean, you're weeds. I mean, if we spray that to kill the weeds, then all of a sudden you've got a brown patch of grass before things start going dormant. So, as far, I think they had in there, 40, they had the number. Be that last one. Yeah, they didn't have the number of pallets, they just had what it would take, and then we're gonna examine it as we go and figure out what we can save and what we can't.
And you said this is gonna involve removing all the crepe myrtle?
Around the building, that's the ones in the parking lot and along Walton Street will leave, because they're not affecting the actual building itself. And 2, they'll be isolated to, what's there currently will be isolated to your little islands, so they can't, if you ever removed them, they can't grow out into your grass.
I guess I realize that these were planted a little close to the building, but
Yeah.
have we, I mean, is that really what we want to do? To remove them?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it follows in line too with what we and Brian and his guys actually helped remove what we did take down in the front of the building here, I think, last summer, just because of the problems we were having, because that was the initial problem I think we had with the fountain, was the tree roots growing into your controls and whatnot. So start examining that, and crepe myrtles don't need to be planted next to a building. And then 2, the fact that they grew so large and we're just kind of allowed to go. It's like you're fighting a losing battle.
At one time, there was a mention of irrigation system. Is
Yes.
that still operational?
The irrigation system in the back, when we reinstalled the sod, I think summer ago when we redid the employee parking lot, is functional. My understanding, the system in the front, everything is in place. The control system itself is down because of the control system. The controls need to be replaced. I'm pretty sure that Public Works has that in possession, at which point we're going to install it ourselves and then have the landscapers, when they come in, tweak, add heads here, remove certain ones to where we don't waste the water.
So that will be added as a part of this project.
Yeah, but there's no way to price it because nobody exactly knew where lines and where everything was, but it shouldn't be a dramatic change because we're going to do the labor of installing that control system that we actually already have, and then they're just going to move things as they go. And like I said, I mean, this is a company that kind of, essentially bailed us out on a lot of our grounds and facilities a year ago. I went to them, they were second low bidder in the initial bid or the last bid that I had put out. And they came in and, over the time, they've stepped up, they've caught us up in a lot of places. I know 2 months ago, I believe it was, 78, 138, they actually cut the intersection, didn't charge us because the lady that's part owner of the company came through and just thought it looked like it was a little high on in between cuts. So sent her people out here on the way back. I mean, I appreciated that. I appreciate a company that takes a little bit of pride in the cities that they represent.
Any other questions or comments? So, Lou or Mr. Garrett, y'all have anybody have a motion that we take this before the full council?
I make the motion that we proceed with the maximum, on the landscaping with the maximum cost of $34,189.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Little, do we have a second? I'll second it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Aye. It passes. That's what we have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Moving to Mr. Garrett for the airport committee.
Chris will be coming back up to speak.
All right, Mikey, I'll take the screen in the middle, please, sir. He'll put me up. Well, we can use this too, until he gets me going. Essentially, I'll use this to, come on, there we go. I like visuals. Okay, so I won't get into a lot of discussion on the projects that we have coming up at the airport simply because that's going to require your approval, and we'll discuss those as we get to them. But just real quick, you can see the fuel sales that we had June, July, since we last met. Fairly consistent with years past, or, well, last year, the year before. The profit is roughly about 5% of what sales are. Costs have continued to rise. If you've been by the airport since August 1st, you'll see that the price per gallon is now $4.39, but we're still competitive with surrounding airports. The airport profit and loss is a little bit skewed for June and July because that was the actual existing hangar maintenance that we performed for roughly, I think it was about $25,000, $26,000. And good news is we were able to actually split it over the 2 months. So it wasn't one terrible month, it was just 2 semi-bad ones. But we'll jump back into the black as we go forward. That's all I've got.
That's all we got, Mayor.
Thank you.
We have
Yeah,
a
you
couple
got-
items
you
of
got a
business
couple
here.
items.
East Apron Rehabilitation and Expansion Project.
Okay,
Before you-
back in May, I believe I made the first presentation where Logan and I had worked on what was at that time the rehabilitation of the East Apron area, as well as the expansion. It includes a concrete pad outside of the Avgas fuel tank that we have now. And the discussion was that DOT had come up with, close to $1 million. Well, we then pushed it back so we could kick it off in FY19 and follow state fiscal year. Well, we're now here and asking for approval. The total amount is $468,564 in federal funds that we're receiving, $607,242 in state funding. Our local match will be $215,675.07 to get down to the pennies, which is roughly 25% of that cost. Well, that we will be required to do. We can do that in in-kind labor. We can do that in fiscal money. It just kind of depends on what we do. But I did want to show what we're actually doing. The darker blue is actually what exists and is what will be torn out and repaved. The part to the right of that fills out the completed rectangle is what the expansion will actually be. Counted those up earlier. We will add roughly 15, 16 tie-down spaces, and then you will have essentially what works out to be a taxi lane that takes you to the avgas tank, goes around to where eventually a jet fuel tank would go. We're looking at a terminal building, we're looking at other facilities. This allows us expansion for the future. So, you know, we're fortunate to have everything what I call shovel ready, to where the DOT sees that and is willing to step up the funding and essentially grant us as much or more funding than they did any other small airport in the state of Georgia. And, you know, with approval, and essentially what we're asking is that we approve the entire amount and that we approve E.R. Snell as the low bid contractor on this project. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Was that just for the east, April? But the
Correct.
east and west?
This is just for the east side.
Point of clarification, we'll need two separate motions on this. One, to accept the funding, federal and state funding, and secondly, to award the bid to E.R. Snell.
Correct.
We need a third? We need a third?
No, you should just need two, because you can accept the funding in one motion,
Okay.
and then the contractor in the second.
We ready for the motion? I make the motion to approve the funding request.
Second.
Been motion and second. All in favor by the word of aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll move on to the next motion.
I'll make that motion to award it to E.R. Snell.
Second.
Been motion and second. All in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? We will actually move it to the approval for next week. I guess we'll move to the west, April. Chris?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I'll pull that drawing up and explain that briefly. You have a 240-foot setback essentially from center runway to center of where you're allowed access points, or what I call taxiway, taxi lanes. We are currently in violation. You can see the part that is paved and has the cross stripes on it is existing, and we're obviously inside of that. For us to receive funding from the DOT and the federal government going forward for anything that we do on the west apron or the west side of the airport, we have to bring this into compliance. The request is for the darker area they call the new partial parallel taxiway, which gets it to that 240-foot mark. And as we discussed back in June, that is what will be required to allow Skydive Monroe and Bill Scott and MGSA, the Mid-Georgia Soaring Association, to actually have access to the runway. Because the other will be abandoned, and then should this motion carry forward, will be removed. And if you can kind of, I included the attachment of the bid. We went back to E.R. Snell, which was the direction of the DOT since they won the east side bid, and asked them to bid this west side. The bid does not include the removal of the cross-striped area because that would add about another $50,000 to the project. The concept here is to request that we spend this $103,000 to pave that area, which will also save us about $60,000 if we chose not to do it this year and we chose to do it next year, because you're adding another $40,000 for mobilization, and you're adding to E.R. Snell having to find that time to get back out should at the time they be the low bid. So if we go ahead and do it, yes, it costs us $100,000 right now, but it also saves us from spending $150,000, $160,000 next year and allows us to, once again, receive grant funds should we make improvements to the west apron.
I noticed you said that 103 don't include the removal of that asphalt.
Correct.
So who's gonna do the removal of the asphalt?
The city will.
Anyone else have any questions?
Now, where's this money coming from, Chris?
The money was, Logan and I discussed that, pulled out of capital improvement funds for the year.
We have some transportation funds available and splost, so we're okay there. A lot of that is going to be reimbursed from the North Broad project. So as we pay the contractors, we get reimbursed pretty quickly and heavily from GDOT. And then, you know, cash flow wise, we're okay in that splost fund for transportation. That's where it'll be coming from.
So this and the previous.
Correct. So
disbursements
our match, our
will end up
contribution,
coming
cash
from
match.
SPOS
from
fund.
SPOS transportation fund.
Transportation, SPOS transportation funds.
We need a motion on the 103.
I'll make the motion to approve the request as stated.
Second.
Been motion and second. All in favor by aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? We will move it to next week council meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you,
I
Ms.
think that will be all for us, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Public Works, Chairman Dickinson.
All right, first, the solid waste report.
Yes, I'm gonna give you an update on our transfer station. Our drainage is still pending for streets and transportation. Pit wall has been completed as of July 17th. I got photos before and after pictures you'd like to see. And the push wall is 90% complete. One metal section is still left to be installed. Material has been ordered to be finished this month. The tipping floor is still pending in the CIP for 2019, and the scales will be worked on this Friday by Fairbanks after transfer station closed. That's all I got.
All right, any questions? Okay, streets and transportation report.
Thank you, Mr. Dickinson. Just highlighting, not necessarily the report, but actually what we got going on now is, Logan alluded to earlier, this rain has not only affected the Spring Street project, but everything that we do on the side of the road as well, which is about 50% of what we got going on right now. But we are in the middle of our LMIG deep patching with a few streets left to go there. The Mathis, Douglas area, Ford Street, and West Creek Circle have yet to be deep patched. That's probably, depending on the weather, favorable conditions, a week and a half, 2 weeks from being completed. Once that is completed, we will then start the overlay portion of the project, just a shade over 2 miles. That will bring up the integrity, put the integrity back into those streets that have been patched. We're constantly on the right of way. Right now, we're at about a 3-week turnaround getting through the city. Not quite where I would like for it to be, but due to the weather and the wet conditions, we just can't cut as fast and as much in one day as we can on a good dry day. So they're doing that. Outside of that, everything else seems to be on par. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Doesn't look like there are any questions. Okay, let's turn to the Transportation Alternatives Program grant application. Folks, you doing that?
I will take that. Excuse me. This is a new grant application that we're going to submit to GDOT for. It's only a 20% local match. It's another federal pass-through. And the goal here is to connect what we're doing on the North Broad project with City Hall, basically where our streetscape for downtown currently stops, and get that section completed. Also further enhance the section down to East Highland, back over past Scoops and the church, and then turn right back down North Lumpkin. Total streetscape project cost is estimated at $2.8 million, and the city would be responsible for $572,315 of that. This is it's a pretty large project in terms of what GDOT offers, and it's coming at us pretty quick. I know we have a lot in motion right now, but this seems to be a good way just to kind of to finish everything that we're working on. And I know this has been a big topic from a lot of your constituents, as well as trying to finish out this section and tie it all together. So that's our goal here, is to just put in this application before the end of the month and hope for the best on this award. Any questions on this? It's a pretty long application.
And you said them sidewalk gonna start from where?
From Marable Streets, East and West Marable, right up here at North Broad, come all the way back down past City Hall to turn at East Highland, and then turn back south on North Lumpkin. And that would run back down to Spring Street in front of the historic courthouse. So basically, it's to create a larger pedestrian corridor that enhances the one we have downtown and then moves it out to the side. We've looked at doing Wayne Street in the same way. Wayne Street was going to be much more expensive as part of this grant application, so we could have turned west and then south on Wayne, but that was going to be a good bit more expensive with a lot of infrastructure impediments. So this one seems to be the cheapest, most efficient route. And I think we have a good shot at this, being that this is on a state route. It's not a full-fledged requirement, but this seemed to be one of the boxes to check.
Is that GDOT money only for the projects of sidewalks similar?
It is. Sidewalks, street lighting, the same basic design elements that we have in other streetscapes.
I really like this idea. There's one question on the Lumpkin Street, after we turn off for Broad, would it cost us more to go the full stretch of Highland? To Village, so we finish that block? Stop in the middle of the block.
We can look at that. This was just kind of what we came up with to kind of finish the design element to connect to GDOT corridors.
Lumpkin,
Yeah.
but it seems like we're just stopping Highland right in the middle of a block.
Yeah, that is the question there, and talking with our engineers, Kickenwood, we thought that if we had 2 points on GDOT routes, we would be more inclined to receive an award that way.
But would it not be in our best interest or too terribly costly for us to run it? The rest of the block?
I mean, we can certainly price that out as part of the project, so if we were awarded this grant, then of course we can look at, hey, what does it cost to finish out this last little run of Highland? Certainly, yeah, makes sense. Any other questions?
We need a motion on that?
Oh,
I would entertain a motion to approve the application, proceeding with the application. Motion, second?
Second.
And a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's unanimous.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Utilities, Mr. Little.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
We'll do the monthly reports first. Mr. Thompson, you want to do electric and telecom?
Yes, sir, thank you. Items of, or points of interest for this month were, of course, the storm we had. I just want to go over the the damage and the response. At the height of the damage, we had most of Station 2, which feeds off of down below the library. We had very little load left on that station initially. The majority of the damage was, of course, on McDaniel and Highland, but we also had substantial damage on Alcovey. We had substantial damage in smaller spots all across the south and west area of the city. All departments turned out and helped us. Mr. Middlebrooks, Jeremiah, Public Safety, all helped us. We couldn't have gotten the response done as quickly as we did if we hadn't had that help. They cleared up. When we showed up to a site, they already had the trees gone, and all we had to do was put the wire back up. Took about 23, 24 hours to get everyone turned back up that could be turned up that day. Did have some homes that were damaged that had to be left off until they could get those repairs. The last one was turned back on Tuesday morning. So it was a pretty good response to a pretty significant damage to the system. FTTX update, we have turned on our first customers. It is going as well as I could expect. We did some Wi-Fi testing inside those customer sites and multiple devices running over 200 meg, which is a 1 gig connection. If you're getting 200 meg, 250 meg over Wi-Fi, you're pretty much rolling along pretty good. So I'm real happy with how that's coming out. We have some stuff tonight, some later items on the agenda discussing pole attachments, and I wanted to clarify what these pole attachments in the 5G update. Those of you that followed the 5G movement at the state level realize that there's two missions to this. There's the GMA mission, and then there's the electric utility mission. These are pretty much as one now. GMA is working to make sure you have your home rule and can decide and set rules and regulations of the placement of antennas and towers for 5G. Pole attachments only interact with the actual physical attachment of fibers to the poles. I'll take any questions you may have.
That box going on the poles, 27 cubic feet?
Yet to be determined.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you.
Mr. Middlebrooks, you want to do your report?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Little. Just a couple quick updates off the project list there. One being the Highway 11 78 relocation. The contractor has finished laying all the pipe work. The guy building the new take station, which will do away with the little building that sits up on the corner. That was finished installed today. The control guy will start tomorrow. And then by the end of next week, we should be completely finished with that project. Outside of taking the old pipe off the bridge. That'll be scheduled with another contractor and probably be done at night. The extension out to Mount Vernon has been completed. Just waiting on the meter set to complete that job. The sewer rehab on Olympia Way started. Ran into a few issues with our equipment. Had to have some repairs made, so we're starting back on it now. The design and review and all at the sewer plant, I'm sorry. Met with Carl. We've had numerous tours going through the different sewer plants and get an idea of the equipment and process we wanted to go with. We've narrowed all that down now. So should be coming back probably in the August meeting with some numbers to nail that down. And the water plant rehab, you've probably seen those pictures in the email I sent you. All the paint's been removed, dry fall's been installed in the ceilings, and we'll start the floor system. It should be there this week sometime. So that's all I got.
Thank you for your report. Now, you have a request for replacing the secondary telescoping valves?
Yes. Let me get to that page. Asking to purchase 2 telescoping valves for the sewer plant. These are the valves that control the, moving the sludge from the primary, the secondary clarifiers back to the aeration basin. The low bid on that was $13,750 from Templeton and Associates.
All of this has needed repairs, and it's in line with getting the sewer plant back in better shape.
Yes, something else I wanted to add on that too. The 3 items I got on here tonight are all items that will continue to be used even after the upgrade. All this goes between the beginning and the end of as far as the plant goes. These are equipment that we'll continue to use.
Is there a motion to approve the request for the telescoping valves?
Make the motion to approve it as, from Templeton Associates quote of $13,750.
Motion by Mr. Larry Bradley. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Then, now the primary chain clarifiers, you need to say anything about those?
Okay, the second one is the, asking to purchase new chain for our primaries. We recently rehabbed 3 and 4. Now 1 and 2 is in the need for repair. USA roller chain and sprockets was the low bid at $11,628.
Any questions about that? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to purchase the primary chain clarifiers from USA Roller, chain and sprocket at the $11,628.
Motion by Mr. Adcock. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Larry Bradley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We will recommend that to full council. And Mr. Middlebrooks and
Last but not least.
gas feed system.
Asking to purchase the automatic gas feed system for our chlorine and our sulfur dioxide. We're currently, this is an adjustment we have to make based off of flow. This would automate that. We've actually went to this same system at the water plant several years ago. Has worked very well. So we went back to water treatment and controls and asked them to look at our situation at the sewer plant, see if that same equipment would work, and it would. There's also a sole source letter attached for this equipment. So water treatment and controls was the only one to bid, and that price is $13,165. This will also save money on the chemicals, because it's automated, so it's not a lot of times we'll tend to over chlorinate because of the rainfall, and you get such a large volume of water coming through, such as today. Once that hit the plant, you're looking at probably 5 to 6 million gallons of flow. We'll make that adjustment. As soon as that number goes back down, that piece of equipment is still treating at that level of 5 or 6 million gallons. So until it's changed, you're basically wasting chemicals. So this would save money there.
Well, I think there were a lot of, I think we're all aware that there were a lot of repairs that need to be made at the sewer plant. It looks like some of them are falling.
Absolutely.
All at this time. Is there a motion to approve the purchase and installation of the automatic gas feed equipment?
Chairman, I'll make that motion that we approve the amount of $13,165 for the automatic gas feed equipment.
Motion by Mr. Larry Bradley. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Adcock. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? The motion carries. We will recommend that to full council. We'll come back to Mr. Thompson with the electric telecom and tell us about the MCI Metro Pole Attachment Agreement.
Yes, sir. I've got two of these pole attachment agreements, and I'll treat them as one for discussion, but we will need two individual votes. The 1996 Telecommunications Act requires us to negotiate with telecom providers for attachments to our electric system. The state of Georgia, during this 5G fight, for lack of a better term, over the past year, has directed utilities and the telecom people to work together nicely, or they will make us work together nicely. What the cities did, the majority of the cities did through ECG, is we appointed ECG to try to negotiate some of these statewide deals. That's what the state wants. The state wants a one-stop shop. So ECG negotiated with MCI and Unity Fiber, who are both long-haul fiber providers. MCI is Sprint's arm, and Unity is they'll run fiber for anybody. What these two have done is they've jumped on board first. They're not, I don't see any imminent danger or time for them to run into Monroe, but they've signed the deal with everybody. You know, any city that's got got an electric system that's in the metro area, that's part of ECG and that's part of this program, they have come forward and say, yeah, we want to sign. And so they're the first ones. You're gonna see more of these, not necessarily more construction in the city, but more of these agreements. So if they ever do get a cell tower agreement in this area, they will already have this agreement done and put to bed. This agreement in no way takes your regulatory home rule rights away of what to do, what you want to do with cell towers. Now that is all between you and the state of Georgia and GMA, how that works out in the near future. All this does is creates a process for these two entities to connect fiber to our existing utility poles. If you have any questions, I will try to answer them.
The process, Mr. Thompson, does it include the rate they would pay?
Yes, sir. $16.50 per pole per year, which is in line with the Comcast statewide and the AT&T statewide.
Just so I understand it, I know that ECG has this standard contract at this rate. GMA also has a standard contract they're presenting to cities across the state. Have we examined both to make a determination of which is the better agreement to sign?
I'm not sure that GMA has a pole attachment agreement. They have an agreement as to locations of the poles and of the 5G equipment. This is just for the fiber itself. This is the standard deal that we've been doing we do it with Windstream. We have tried to do it with Comcast. We've done it with, we actually have this agreement with Walton EMC, a very similar agreement where we work outside with our telecoms.
The conversation I had with GMA staff today indicates that they have the agreement in ECG and they're leaving it up to city system, which one obviously they would prefer.
Right.
But both have agreements that are different. GMA thinks theirs is the better one, obviously. I'm sure ECG thinks theirs is the better one. I just want to be sure that we've looked at alternatives, that we're selecting the right one.
This one falls well within our existing engineering standards and procedures, and those are handled with us through ECG. So that's the side that I look at with the attachment to the pole. What is
Price
safe?
is the only thing I was looking at.
Price is, price is price. It is what it is. This is a little lower than what we get from Windstream, I agree. But I do not see a lot of this in the near future happening. Maybe who knows what's going to happen with wireless in the far future.
Now, you've told me too, if they come along and want to attach to the pole, then we have the agreement, they will attach. But if there's not room on the pole,
They have to pay for the pole to be changed.
totally redo it, so that they're.
We would do the work, or an approved contractor could do the work, a Pike or who, if we don't have time to do the work, but they still have to pay for the work.
And bottom line, these agreements, as you're presenting, are very much in line with the current agreements that we have with others.
Yes,
Except it's a lower rate.
except it is a lower rate.
Significantly,
$4 or $5 per year per pole.
significant, yeah.
Is this self-defense
For who?
for us, getting into this agreement now?
We're gonna have to,
Before the state says,
you're gonna have to do these, by the 1996 Communications Act, you have to do these agreements. You don't have a choice to do them. What letting ECG do this agreement does, it's twofold for us. They pay Austin and Bird. We don't pay Austin and Bird to do the lawyering part of this. And they have pole attachment specialists that do this every day. And they are the engineers for the city. So they have their PEs go through the whole deal and make sure the agreement is correct as far as engineering. Now, we are more than able to go out and negotiate this ourselves, but this is given to us.
Brian and I discussed earlier that it may cost us quite a bit more money to go back and renegotiate ourselves.
Oh, it would cost us a lot of money.
So I don't know that it would be worth it based on the differential of what we hope to bring in versus what this pole attachment costs.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I wouldn't want to recommend we renegotiate either. I would recommend, and I'll support this tonight, but before the meeting next week,
I'll reach out.
that we actually lay the agreements side by side, because there are two statewide agreements right now that are uniform, people choose from. That, you know, that we do the evaluation before we vote on it next week.
We can do that.
right,
So, what action is the committee going to take on it? Are we going to ask that these be approved pending a comparison?
that's what I would recommend.
I would recommend that, I would make the motion that we recommend this to be on the agenda for next week. And at that point in time, though, we have a recommendation on the comparison between this agreement and the GMA agreement before we vote on it next week, and that we vote on it as a item next week as opposed to the consent agenda.
So you make a motion, if I understood it, that as a committee, we're sending this to full council to be considered next week.
As an independent agenda item.
Right. Not as part of the consent agenda.
For the MCI and the Unity.
Both, yeah.
Okay.
Do the same motion.
We can get you an apples to apples comparison of both of them.
Is that agreeable with the committee? I think so. That we just handle that way. Then we will just move this to the full council agenda for next week to be considered.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Thompson, the purchase of the Von test equipment.
Yes, Mr. Little. If you remember during the CIP meetings from last year, we discussed how finding underground faults is, for lack of a better term, troublesome. When the power fails underground, we have to find the exact location, and then we have to dig down and repair that. We have in the past rented one of these devices or borrowed one of these devices, mainly from Walton EMC or from Southeastern Testing. The problem with that is, it's 2:30 in the morning, you gotta wait till 8 o'clock in the morning to borrow or rent the device. And that causes the outage to extend 4, 5, 6 hours longer than it's necessary. So we budgeted $22,000 to purchase the test equipment. We went to Von. Von sells direct, and we spec'd out the device we need to work on our system. It came in at $21,534. And I'll take any questions you may have.
Any questions from Mr. Thompson? Is there a motion?
I make the motion that we approve the expense of, we'll recommend to the council approval of the expenditure of $21,534.
Motion by Mr. Larry Bradley. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Adcock. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We'll recommend the purchase to full council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Thompson, you got another item?
Yes, sir. Again, during the CIP meetings, we discussed system automation. System automation is automated switching that allows the system to repair itself as much as safely and as much as possible during an outage. We have met extensively with ECG, Walton EMC, and Jackson EMC. And we have come to the conclusion that Jackson and Walton, their decision on three-phase automated switching makes the most sense for our system also. They use the Viper ST. It is controlled by the same controller that controls the breakers in our substations. So system familiarity is high with our crews. Our crews know how to use those devices already. They work well in the close confines of our footprint. So what we are asking to do is the first phase of this is to purchase 3 Viper ST automated switches from Power Connections. We have the sole source letters from the providers that Power Connections is the only seller of these devices in the Southeast. We have $150,000 budgeted for the entire project. This will protect the north end of downtown and this building. The main target of that is to protect this building because during an outage, our customers need to be able to come and see us or to access us. Really pushed forward. We had originally designed in a 2-phase or a 2-circuit solution for this building. And we had the outage a month or so ago that took out both those circuits. So we redesigned that into a 3-circuit solution. And I put 3 of the switches in, and that comes in at $54,423. And again, I'll take any questions you may have.
So this is the first phase. How many switches do we eventually want?
Well, Mr. Little, it all depends. How automated do you want the system? I want to protect systems like the water plant, critical infrastructure, the new police department, items like that, and then the core of downtown. So you're looking at probably 12, 13 to do that total. But as you move forward, you might want to protect the jail, the hospital, Great Oaks, any kind of critical infrastructure you see, or places you just want to see that you want to protect. Nursing homes and hospitals are something that a lot of people try to protect.
To accomplish protection of these, it takes more than one switch.
This will take 3 for here, and we're building into the fiber network a tube just for the electric system. And so these will all be connected with fiber, and they'll be connected back to this office physically. No internet connection, so you don't have to worry about somebody hacking it. The only connection will be glass throughout. And so what you do is you build schemes or control modules inside these switches, and you have a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary load. And so the system we're asking for today will have 3, one placed over here near Napa, one over here on Highland, and one right north of Walton Street. So we'll have a circuit coming in from the north, a circuit coming in from off of Spring Street, and then a circuit coming in off of Highland that will provide power for this building in this general area.
Does anybody have any other questions for Mr. Thompson? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion, we present this to the full council next week.
Motion by Mr. Larry Bradley that we present the.
Second.
These three switches for $54,423. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Adcock. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We'll recommend those to full council. Mr. Mayor, that's all utilities has.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Moving to the public safety report, Mr. Adcock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, we'll have the monthly fire report. Chief Owens.
Thank you. The only thing we really have in the last month or so is we did do the deployment of our first aid tent at the 4th of July celebration. Did that as well down at the movie at the Mills, and that was well received in the community, having someone right there on hand where we could quickly deploy when someone needed help, and it was utilized at both events. The only other thing is we're looking, hopefully next week we'll have our quick response vehicle actually be delivered and be back in service. If anyone has any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Yeah, I'm not hearing any, thank you. Monthly police report, Chief Watts.
Thank you. Month of June was pretty busy for us. We did have one very major event when we had that homicide on West Maribor, the 6-year-old lady. But our investigators worked very hard and were able to track down the individual involved. We made an arrest on that. One of the things I do want to brag on our organization is June was when we had our 2 canines that we recently purchased, graduated from canine school, Canine Zero and Canine Gabber. If you haven't had a chance to see those, I encourage you to come out to see the handlers and the dogs themselves. Actually, Councilmember Bradley came out and rode with us a couple Friday nights ago and got pretty close and personal with Zero. He actually took a bite off of him. I don't know if anybody else has that kind of courage to come out and try it, but both these handlers and their dogs have done very well out here in the community. They've had several tracks and several drug arrests since they've been on the street, and I foresee them doing a lot more in the future. One of the things I do want to also brag on is we just recently received the 6 Chevy Tahoes. If you hadn't seen those, I encourage you to look at that. It's provided a lot more room for these officers to effectively do their jobs, and I think it gives it even more of a professional appearance out here in the community. And we're very grateful and thankful for that, from the council allowing that. We're also having tonight our National Night Out down here on Church in South Madison. It's going to be going to 8 o'clock for us for all public safety to reach out to the citizens of the community. So if you get a chance, if we have time after the council meeting, I encourage y'all to go down and take part in that as well. And you see all our numbers from the month of June. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Is there a way we could qualify or quantify the action of the K-9 units?
Yes, actually, what we have, and I brought I didn't know if this was even come up or not. But these officers, they have a software and an app they put on their phone. It's called Pack Track, and what they do is everything that they do from an actual live track or a live mission where they've searched a vehicle or searched a home, it's documented up to actually their training. So, I mean, it's very detailed, everything they do. Every time they get that dog out of the car, it's documented. And the purpose for that is so if they ever go to court on a case, obviously, the attorney's going to try to attack the credibility of the canine handler and the dog, and that documentation will just shoot that out of the water. But it's quantified. It tells you everything, detail.
Yes.
Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of out-of-state training. Are you going to take that?
Yes, sir. What this is Lieutenant Matt McClung's our training coordinator for the City of Monroe Police Department. I don't know if you've seen it, but they recently did active shooter training at Monroe Area High School where they incorporate multiple agencies working together. We've learned how to do that pretty well. What we try to do now is incorporate where we communicate well with fire, EMS, other agencies that may be arriving on scene. And just go a little further with that, what he's asking for here is to do the out-of-state training in Nashville, Tennessee. This is an open-air active shooter. This is, if you remember seeing on TV with the Las Vegas event with the Jason Aldean concert, it's teaching law enforcement how to train in regards to that. And some of the things it goes over is The hands-on course will cover equipment selection, vehicle ambushes, medical emergencies, vehicle and dismounted officers, citizen down rescue, individual team movement techniques, and emergency vehicle crisis response. We've never encountered something like that, but like I tell our guys, it's that, failing to plan is planning to fail, and I think we do a pretty good job on preparing our officers for certain events like this. And this is going to be for September 4th through the 7th in Nashville, Tennessee. It's the actual class costs nothing to us. The only thing we will actually incur a cost on would be per diem in the room for the officer to attend. But we recommend for approval from the council on that.
Are there any questions? Okay, we need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we approve this for full council next week.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We'll recommend that for approval to full council. The Walton County School Resource Officer Program Agreement.
Yes, sir. What this is just a recommend approval for the renewing of the contract. This is our contract from our SO at Monroe Area High School, and it's wrote out, it says NPD and the Walton County Board of Education seek approval of the 2018-19 school cycle SRO contract. Walton County Board of Education agrees to pay the City of Monroe $46,231 for the SRO services provided by the City of Monroe Police Department as set forth in the conditions of this contract. And we've been SRO, we've had an SRO at the Monroe Area High School since 2005, and we look forward to continue with that.
Are there any questions? Hearing none, I call for a motion. Need a motion to.
I'll make a motion that we recommend this to full council next week.
Okay, have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We recommend that to full council for approval next week. One more item is approval of Walton County School Resource Officer Program Agreement for Foothills Charter.
Yes. Again, this is another renewal for the SRO contract at Foothills School. Again, this is the NPD and the Walton County Board of Education seeks approval of the 2018-19 school cycle Foothills contract. Walton County Board of Education agrees to pay the City of Monroe at the rate of $150 per day for 164 days for a total amount of $24,600 annually for SRO services provided by the City of Monroe Police Department as set forth in the conditions of this contract. One things that we wanted to point out on this was last year, just show you how important this school is to the community. Where kids otherwise probably wouldn't have graduated, they were enrolled in this program, and they actually graduated 25 students with fully accredited high school diploma last year. So it's a good program, and we look forward to working alongside with them if we get the council approval to renew that contract.
Thank you, RV. Any questions? Hearing none, need a motion for approval.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we send this to full council next week for approval.
Have a motion to have a second.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll recommend that for approval to full council next week, and that concludes public safety's items on the agenda for this evening, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Adcock. Gentlemen, I just want to express my appreciation for your teams at our back-to-school events that I noticed you're attending, coming in Saturdays, Sundays, holidays on the 4th. Makes it a little bit easier in moments of crises for those kids to trust you, especially children. So just tell your guys how much we appreciate them. Moving to planning and code, Ms. Malcolm's not here. Mr. Dickinson, can you jump on this one for me, please?
Yes, sir.
No report?
Yes, sir. Actually, you have the report before you there for the last couple of months. Just the main highlight on that would be the work of the city marshal. He wrote 117 repair cleanup notices in May and wrote 87. Beyond that, if you have any questions about the balance of the report, I'd be glad to answer them. But just wanted to mention a few things that we've got going on in town that may or may not be in front of anybody for their full attention, but a lot of things are going on that most people don't know about with plans and projects, so I wanted to mention some of the ones that are occurring. Wow Express up on North Broad Street recently got their certificate of appropriateness, and will be expanding their car wash and building a 6,000 square foot building there. The Wendy's put some equipment on their site today for their demolition, so they should be starting that project and rebuilding of that's going on as well. As you all know, Europi is going on downtown. They're doing great work and making great progress. Dr. Wise at the Monroe Animal Care Hospital, she's doing an expansion to her office. That'll be in the rear, so it won't be obvious, but just thought I'd let y'all know. Then, of course, 100 South Broad Street, which used to be the Mike Cash Building, they're looking to get some of their exterior renovations going, get a little buzz going about their project, so that's happening as well. Main Street Walton Mill, the adult apartment complex, has submitted their plans for their civil design, and we're working with them on that. We should be getting their building plans submitted soon. Stone Creek subdivision out on Church Street, going gangbusters, getting it done, even though all this rain is really holding them up. They've done a good job on their erosion control. Just a few other things. Highland Creek is busting wide open with development and new houses being built. The Legends at the Retreat's almost built out. And we had several renovations that may or may not been to anybody's attention, but George Walton Academy did some renovations over the summer in order to get ready for the new school year. They got those in on time. Bank of America did some ADA renovations. Walmart did a renovation for their grocery pickup area. So there's been a lot going on. I don't know if anybody was aware of all of that, so I just wanted to go ahead and mention it. If you have any questions about anything else, I'll be glad to answer them.
No questions? And economic development?
Thank you, Sadie.
Updates from the report here. The hammock park has been installed, and the Rotary Club of Monroe actually funded that for us. They presented a check last month to pay for that local park. The Housing Expo was scheduled for July 21st, which was the day that big storm came through town. So we had to reschedule it because there was no power in the community building. So October 6th is when we're rescheduling that, and this will be the second one that we've hosted. This is when we bring in state agencies like USDA, DCA, we bring in bank representatives and realtors, and they kind of just give tools and resources that are available in Monroe for home ownership. And that's we had over 200 people there last year. We are expecting a big crowd, and we're able to do it this year. Some people had still showed up, and we had to get their name and number and contact them for when we have rescheduled it. Visitor center numbers, want to point that out. Through January to June, in 2017, we had just under 500 visitors. We've doubled that this year with over 1,000 visitors to the visitor center and museum from January to June. So you might not realize how many people are actually coming through on the weekends to visit and learn about Monroe. Next week is the Georgia Downtown Conference. This is an annual conference that's held and brings together all the Main Street communities and downtowns all over the state. And the Mill Development is presenting a session, which is about thoughtful infill development. So we'll be presenting on that, representing Monroe, and we have won another award for downtown design excellence. So we'll bring that back after next week. The GIT Conference, which is the Georgia Initiative for Community Housing, will be hosted in Athens in September. Part of that conference is always a bus tour where they take all the attendees from cities all over the state of Georgia and a lot of state agencies. They do a bus tour and kind of see a community's housing progress and what they've done. They would want to do the bus tour in Monroe this fall, so we'll be busing people from Athens to Monroe and host a local reception and get to show some of the things that we've done. It'll be a little different than some of the bus tours because we're still very much in progress with our housing, but they're thinking that'll be encouraging for a lot of cities that aren't like the big cities that have other sources of funding. So we're excited to host that. I think it's a great opportunity. I want to mention the DDA closed on their sale of 202 East Spring Street and 115 Midland Avenue to Pimento Investments, and they'll be beginning renovations hopefully soon into making those into a restaurant space for downtown Monroe. And we also had our annual planning retreat on July 30th, and I'll be bringing to council next month kind of a summary of the strategic plan updates for the downtown development. And then lastly, it's not on here, but I wanted to mention that we got it yesterday from Georgia Cities Foundation, approval for a revolving loan fund in the amount of $220,000 that will be going to YP Monroe for the Your Pie renovation. That's one of the revolving loan fund tools that we have access to as a downtown and a Main Street community. And so we're thrilled to get that. We have another application in and another one that'll be submitted soon. This is a way to really get local projects going that maybe don't make sense without those other financing tools. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about anything else on there.
Thank you, sir.
I think we're good. Thank you, David. Thank you, Sadie, and thank you, Ross. I think we just kind of scooted right on into her. Moving along to items of discussion. We have a public hearing variance. Mr. Kelly?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is at 615 East Church Street. They're looking for a variance on the house size. They're actually looking to subdivide that lot into two buildable lots with the 615 house obviously existing. And then they want to move a structure from South Madison Avenue to the newly created lot that wouldn't meet the 1,600 square foot requirement. It is a structure that's being saved out of the historic district, and Planning Commission is recommending for approval for them to move an 1,100 square foot structure there and put it on a house. It's in keeping with some of the size of the houses in that area, so we thought it would be a good idea to grant that approval. And the developer, the builder, wanted to try and get a variance to allow for a stick-built house of that size as well. Well, we kind of separated that into a separate issue and said, if you're going to stick-build a house, you're going to have to meet the zoning requirements, but if you're going to save a historic structure and move it there, then we'll allow you the variance. So that's that one. If you've got any questions.
That house would not face Church Street, correct?
It would face Felker. That's correct.
Okay, any questions? Sure, we'll come back to that. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Moving to the public hearing variance on 125 North Wayne.
Yes, sir, and that's for the Berry Speed Shop site that's soon to be Silver Queen. And they are requesting variance on building setback, parking requirements, and impervious surface requirements. I didn't really feel like they needed to request the impervious surface variance due to the fact that they were about 100% impervious, and they're reducing that. So they're reducing the nonconformity on that one, so I thought maybe that one might not need consideration. But what they want to do is put the building up on the street, like downtown, and replicate that development pattern that we have on Broad Street, and have a front-loaded building with side and rear parking. So they requested that variance, and also the parking variance, I think, was the only other one. And the Planning Commission is recommending approval for all of those variances in order to accommodate the expansion of the downtown development pattern, which is kind of an expressed desire of our zoning ordinance.
Sounds fantastic. Any questions? Thank you. We'll look forward to that next week. Move to the first reading of the Soil Erosion, Sedimentation, and Pollution Control Ordinance Amendment. Mr. Kelly.
Yes, sir. And again, that'll be done next week at the council meeting. It's basically just an update of that ordinance section in order to keep in compliance with the changes to the state law as those are implemented. What that does was it allows us to continue as a local issuing authority where we have the ability to review soil erosion control plans and issue permits and do that on the local level rather than having our builders and developers have to go to the state and wait on that long drawn-out process of application and holding up their project. So being a local issuing authority is a great benefit that we have, and we just want to maintain it. So that's what that's for.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we'll talk about that next week. Moving along to Mr. Bailey with our new Airport Commission appointments.
I can go ahead and take that for you, sir. We're going to fill 5 slots. Technically, they expired last year, but we continued on since we amended the Airport Commission Code of Ordinances last year, so we just felt like we would just keep the current Airport Commission in place. So this year, all 5 slots are up. This to replace Larry Fussell, Bill Scott, Dan Nugent, Rodney Etheridge, and Bill Stone. And we have 5 applications. Mr. Virgil Williams Jr., Bill Scott, Dan Nugent, William Chapman, and Cy Nunnally. I think everybody but Dan is here tonight. So if you guys want to ask any of these applicants any questions, we've asked them to come tonight. They have great appreciation for our airport. They're all heavily involved business owners at the airport. So if you have any questions, please let me know. We can pepper these guys.
You want to ask them each to stand up and ask them stuff? Gentlemen, I appreciate your involvement and commitment to watching our town grow and helping our town grow. I'm excited that you're a part of it. And are there any?
Welcome any questions
Anybody
or
else?
comments. But
I'd be curious if anybody that, any of the 5 or the 4 that are here now, would like to comment on the presentation made on the improvements to the airport that was just made earlier this month. Anybody wants to stand up and say anything?
come on up, Bill.
With all the input that's come in the last year that we've had the opportunity to present our ideas and work with you guys on the airport, I think the improvements have come along very nicely. And the projected items that are coming up and that we've discussed over the last few months, I think it's just been huge, and I think it'll be a great asset to the city as the airport improves, and having some new people on the side running the FBO and everybody. I think it's a good mix to try to keep the airport moving forward, keep the projects moving, and given our insight as constant users. And fortunately, everybody's listening, and thank you.
And again, we really rely on the Airport Commission for their knowledge of all things aeronautical. The technical stuff that we as city staff don't see on a day-to-day basis, these guys help us out with, and we just value their input in their role as advisors on this Airport Commission. So thank you, all you applicants. Appreciate that.
Moving along to items requiring action. Beth, look, 2018 millage rate.
Yes. So we have worked extensively and along with you and the council at the budget retreat, looking at the 2018 tax digest that was provided to us from the county. If we went with an unchanged millage rate from 2017, that would represent a 1.98% increase over last year's digest. And y'all, as a council, decided against that. So it is recommended by staff to do a full rollback for 2018. This would be set the millage rate at 7.277. The city would potentially get, it'd be like a 3.59% increase from the new digest, which would translate to $105,426 from 2017. That's assuming that we get 100% of collections. And I think in 2017, we were at 98% collections. So the recommendation is to do the full rollback at 7.277 mils. This would be the 7th of the last 8 years to do a full rollback for the city of Monroe.
That's great. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that we adopt the rollback rate.
I'll second that.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Dickinson, a second by Mr. Larry Bradley. Any discussion?
Can I make a point of clarification to add the forms PT 32.1 and PT 38 to the motion?
So, done.
So amended and so seconded, Mr. Bradley?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I
Now,
would like to just make the comment, since I've been on the council, and this is my 7th year now, I've seen this council take the steps to continually lower the tax rate for the city of citizens of the city of Monroe. And staff of the city of Monroe has been very good in complying with the council request and taking the necessary conservative actions necessary to not only operate the city effectively and efficiently at the lower rates, but also to continue to improve the reserve. So I think I appreciate my fellow council members of doing this, and I really appreciate the staff of following through with it. Unlike some of our other neighboring governmental bodies that continue to raise millage rates, the city has been willing to decrease millage rates throughout the time, and I would hope that the media picks up on that and makes a point of it. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Bradley. I have a motion and a second. All in favor? All opposed, like sign? Motion carries. We will roll it back for the 7th out of 8 years. Thank you, everybody. Moving to the R1A moratorium, 90-day extension.
I'll take that, Mayor.
Thank you, Paul.
Mayor, as you recall, in February this year, this body passed a 6-month moratorium on R1A zoning application permits. The city staff has been working diligently with a retained land planner to address a rewrite of that R1A zoning classification, but they need more time. So what I have to present for your consideration this evening, and I apologize, it is not on your electronic agenda, but that is a resolution to extend the moratorium an additional 90 days so that the land planner and city staff can finish up that cleanup of that R1A zoning classification. So I have a resolution to read for your consideration, Mayor and Council. And it will take me a minute, so I apologize on the length, but if you'll bear with me. This is a resolution of the Mayor and the Council of the City of Monroe, Georgia, State of Georgia, to extend a moratorium on the acceptance of applications for rezoning or annexation to R1A zoning, whereas the City of Monroe, Georgia, has been vested with substantial power to regulate the use of property within the city for the purposes of maintaining the health, moral, safety, security, peace, and general welfare of the city, and whereas the city has the legislative power to adopt reasonable resolutions or regulations relating to property within the city for which no provision has been made by general law and which are not inconsistent with the Constitution of the State of Georgia or any charter provision applicable thereto. And whereas local governments may impose moratoria on zoning decisions, building permits, and other development approvals where warranted, and whereas specifically the Supreme Court of Georgia has held that to justify the state in thus interposing its authority in behalf of the public, it must appear first that the interests of the public generally as distinguished from those of a particular class require such interference, and second, that the means are reasonably necessary for the accomplishment of the purpose and not unduly oppressive upon those individuals. And whereas the mayor and city council have, as a part of the planning, zoning, and growth management effort, been in review of the city's current zoning ordinances and studying the city's estimates and projections regarding the anticipated type of development with the city, and whereas the mayor and the city council, as part of the planning, zoning, and growth management efforts and strategy for the city, have called for continued city staff review and overview of the current mix of housing available and projections on the future mix of housing within the city. And whereas the mayor and the city council do not intend to frustrate developments that have been recently rezoned, nor to affect any development rights that have vested as of the date of the original moratorium in February 2018, and whereas the mayor and the council recognize the need for a zoning classification in the city referred to as medium lot density medium lot residential district, R1A. And whereas the mayor and the city council recognize the stated goal of the R1A zoning classification is to provide for areas of medium density, detached, single-family residential uses, to recognize and protect the moderate lot size, street grid-based, and highly pedestrian character of the city's turn-of-the-century neighborhoods and subdivisions, to reinforce the traditional residential development pattern characteristic of the historic areas of the city, to permit compatible accessory uses which normally complement balanced and attractive residential uses, to stabilize and protect owner-occupied housing and encourage a suitable environment for family life, and to protect moderate-density, single-family residential areas from encroachment of higher-density residential and incompatible non-residential uses. And whereas the mayor and the city council are directing city staff to further continue studying the current mix of housing, make projections on the future mix of housing and impacts of the same, and to make recommendations as to the contemplated pending zoning regulations and updates, and that additional time is needed to accomplish said goal. And whereas the mayor and city council are further directing staff to continue working with the retained land planner to study the current mix of housing within the city of Monroe and the projections as to the future mix of housing, impacts of the same, and to make recommendations as to the contemplated pending zoning regulations and updates. And whereas the mayor and city council have determined that it is in the best interest of the city for the protection of the health and public safety that there be continued a moratorium on the acceptance of applications for rezoning or annexation within the city for zoning into the R1A zoning classification for a sufficient and reasonable time to allow for a comprehensive and in-depth review and modification of the city's comprehensive future land use plan, zoning ordinance, and development requirements related specifically to the R1A zoning classification, and additional time is needed to accomplish said goal. And whereas a moratorium on the acceptance of zoning or annexation applications for R1A zone properties is a proper police power while the above referenced studies by the city and city staff are performed, and whereas a resolution imposing a continued moratorium on the acceptance of applications for rezoning or annexation to R1A zoning was adopted by the mayor and city council in February 2018, whereas all stated goals of said resolution are incorporated fully herein, and whereas this additional time is needed to accomplish all stated goals of said original February 2018 resolution, and whereas the mayor and city council have determined that it is in the best interest of the city to grant an additional 90 days to fully investigate, study, and accomplish the goals of said resolution, now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and city council do hereby declare and adopt an additional 90-day moratorium from the expiration of the original moratorium set for August 13th, 2018, for all acceptance of applications for rezoning or annexation into R1A zone property as follows. Number one, the preamble of this resolution shall be considered to be and is hereby incorporated by reference as if fully set out herein. Number two, no plans or applications shall be accepted by city staff for rezoning or annexation of property to be rezoned or annexed into the city into R1A zoning for an additional 90 days from the original expiration date of the original resolution, the same being August 13th, 2018, so an additional 90 days from that date. Number three, this moratorium shall have no impact on any land development, building, or construction permits for any property currently zoned R1A at the time of the adoption of the original resolution or this resolution. Number four, this moratorium shall have no effect on the issuance of permits or site plan reviews for any property currently zoned R1A and submitted prior to the adoption of the original February 2018 resolution. During this additional 90-day, number five, during this additional 90-day period, the city staff shall study the current mix of housing, continue to make projections on the future mix of housing and the impacts of the same, and continue to make recommendations as to the contemplated pending zoning regulations and updates to further the city's interest in growth management so as to promote the traditional police power goals of health, safety, morals, aesthetics, and the general welfare of the city. Number six, during this additional 90-day period, the city staff is further hereby directed to continue to work with the retained land planner to finalize the study of the current mix of housing, to make final projections on the future mix of housing and impacts of the same, and to make final recommendations as to the contemplated pending zoning regulations and updates so as to further the city's interest in growth management and so as to promote the traditional police powers of the health, safety, welfare, morals, and aesthetics and general welfare of the city. Number seven, this moratorium extension shall become effective upon its adoption. So resolved this 7th day of August 2018. That is the resolution, Mayor. I know it's a lot of words, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding the same. But essentially, the original 6-month moratorium is set to expire next Monday, August the 13th. This will give staff an additional 90 days into essentially the middle, early part of November 2018 to finalize their work and efforts on the rewrite of the R1A zoning classification.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. I'll entertain a motion. What
Mr.
he said.
Mayor, I move that we adopt the resolution as stated.
Second.
I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Dickinson, a second by Mr. Little. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. 90-day extension for the R1A moratorium. Moving next to the approval of out-of-state travel for fire. Mr. Owens?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Want to bring forward the council approval for out-of-state training to the National Fire Academy at Emmitsburg, Maryland for our Fire Marshal R.J. Lott, Captain Lott, and Captain Jack Armstrong. This is actually training that was approved last October, but was delayed and put back because we had the hurricanes come through. We thought it was just going to be a month or two, but Department of Homeland Security pushed it back to August of this year. So this is just approval. The expenses, the per diem, all other expenses and lodging and everything will actually be covered by Department of Homeland Security for this.
Great, thank you. To approve the out-of-state travel for Fire Marshal R.J. Lott and Captain Jack Armstrong to attend the National Fire Academy in Emmitsburg, Maryland on August 12th through the 17th of 2018. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Garrett, second. Second by Ms. Crawford. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Good meeting, everybody. Thank you. Could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Garrett, second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Crawford. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Everybody have a good night. Thank you.